Okay, welcome back. We are now ready for our seventh session of the day, learning from the master's theses, efficiently using MarcEdit integrations and Google productivity tools together to improve a set of records, presented by Catherine Carrà from SUNY Oswego. Catherine Carrà is the Cataloging and Government Documents Librarian at Penfield Library, SUNY Oswego. She is also Penfield's Federal Depository Library Program Coordinator and a member of the SUNY Metadata Standards and Policies Working Group. Okay, I am going to now stop my share, and whenever you are ready, Catherine, you can get going. I do not hear you, Catherine, so you might want to make sure your mic is on.
Sorry about that, everybody. There now?
Sounds good now. Thank you.
All right. So, hello, everybody. I'm going to be presenting, and now, of course, I cannot go back and forth on this. Cool. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, today I'll be presenting on a project I did to edit our master's thesis records. For a little background, in December of 2023, when I had been a librarian for all about 3 months, one of the other librarians at Penfield told me that a patron had had trouble finding some biology master's theses in the catalog, and she thought it was because there was a code missing in the fixed field in the records, which was correct, and that meant that they were not being identified as theses in the catalog. So I thought this would be a simple project for me to try to learn MarcEdit as a new librarian. It was not. It ended up taking me about 6 months, partly because of some of the mistakes I made. But then also there were just some complications, as you can see in this photo of a title page of of a thesis. So it has the title, some wording saying that it was a paper presented to a department at the college, impartial fulfillment of the requirement for the degree, and then the author's name and the year. So I originally had a Excel Excel file that had been exported from Alma Analytics, which I decided to work on in Sheets. So there were over 2,100 lines, each one representing a thesis. And from here on out, I do want to warn you, there's going to be a lot of mark fields mentioned. I'll try to keep it comprehensible to any of the non-catalogers here today. So the information I had in that spreadsheet was the title up to the statement of responsibility where the author's name goes. So I did not have any author names. I had a series statement, which I ended up finding 37 different series names. Those were based on the program that each student was in. So I did actually use those to create the batches of records that I worked on. So there was some useful information. In this, on the other hand, there were no OCLC numbers, no MMSIDs or call numbers, so no unique identifying information, which would have helped to find things. But using the information I had there, which also included some columns that describe the resource type or the form of the item, and looking at some of the records in OCLC Connexion, I was able to confirm that the 008 field or the fixed field was missing the thesis code, which would indicate that the resource in the record is a thesis. And just going ahead, I'm going to be using 008 and fixed field interchangeably for the most part during this presentation. So looking at the spreadsheet and then those initial checks in Connexion, I started planning my project. First, I determined that I would need to do the work in MarcEdit to make these massive edits. Then I realized that I was going to have to export records from OCLC to MarcEdit, then import them back to OCLC, and then export them into Alma, since these were all in the network zone in Alma, which in SUNY is our shared bibliographic environment. SUNY policy is that for any records that are in the network zone, you can only make local changes to. So a local note, something specific to your institution. So that would add an extra step in this. Then after reviewing the spreadsheet and looking at some of the records, I started discovering that there were a lot more changes that needed to be made than just those fixed field changes. And so with all these corrections that need to be made, I decided that I would need to track them and then how I would fix them. So as I mentioned, there were a lot of changes I had to make, or at least more accurately that I wanted to change. The only one that I really had to change was adding M as a content code to the fixed field and adding a 502 field, which is a dissertation note. And if you have one, you have to have the other. I also decided to edit a lot of the 245 title fields due to a variety of reasons. Many had a subfield C, which is where the author's name is supposed to go, but they didn't include the author's name and they were on the items themselves, which was odd to me. A lot of times those subfield Cs had all that information that you could see in that photo of a title page. Sometimes that was split up between two different subfields. Sometimes there'd be a random division of the main title into two separate subfields, which also was strange to me. There's also a decent amount of incorrect capitalization. So I decided I'd want to switch all those. So all of these records were created in AICR2, which is a previous cataloging standard. Since I was already in them, I decided to switch the 260 field, which is the publication information, to the new RDA version, which is 264. MarcEdit has a tool to update records to RDA, so it's very simple to do. Then in the 300 field, which is the physical description, some of them had missing illustrations, missing that there were illustrations in them. Many of them were missing the height of the item. Others have very odd paging information that did not match the actual thesis. Even though all of the theses had a bibliography, not all the records noted that, so I added the 504 bibliography field and added the code to the 008. And then since I was already making all of these descriptive cataloging changes, I thought I might as well make some more edits. Mostly I wanted to take advantage of an opportunity to engage in some critical cataloging work. As I was looking through more and more of the records, I noticed a few Library of Congress subject headings that I did not particularly like or agree with. First was the term children with social disabilities or people with social disabilities, which I don't really understand what that means, first of all. Secondly, I don't think anyone searching a catalog would understand what it would mean. And more importantly, it associates people who are socially marginalized or disadvantaged of having a disability. So I used a variety of different, more specific and appropriate alternative headings from the LCSH, like underprepared college students or low-income students. Then for people or children with mental disabilities, I wanted to use something that was more specific and also language that people would be more likely to use. So for those, I ended up using vocabulary, things from the Sears vocabulary, and those would be either children or people with intellectual disabilities or people or children with developmental disabilities. Along with that, there were several records that used outdated language. It was, what was commonly used maybe even preferred when these records were created mostly in the 1970s or 80s. So I added a note to acknowledge the presence of that outdated language. That also gave me an opportunity to experiment with using the MarcEdit and Alma integration, since those were going to be local notes. And then I also did some work to update some special collections call numbers that were formatted incorrectly, because you can also edit holdings records using MarcEdit. So I had all these issues, all these edits. There was a lot to keep track of. But I am not going to explain much about how I did it because I really didn't do a great job with that at first. So the next part of this presentation is going to be mostly an explanation of what not to do if you're doing a project like this. So my initial mistake was in how inefficiently and ineffectively I used Sheets, Google Sheets, and Google Docs. First of all, I should have had much more identifying information in that spreadsheet. I was still pretty new at using Alma, and especially using analytics. I just really want to get started. So I skipped ahead and started using a copy of the original spreadsheet that I was given. Um, then I really didn't very precisely track any of the changes I was going to make. I would put, a vague comment like capitalization, which didn't really tell me anything to refer to what kind of exact change I wanted to make, like what needs to be capitalized and the proper capitalization. Then I started highlighting rows in different colors without actually creating any key or guide of what those colors signified. I was the only person doing this project, so that wasn't really a problem, but if there had been multiple people working on it, that probably would have ended up being a problem for everybody. I did start a Google document to track my decisions about what kind of changes I was going to make. The main problem with that is that I didn't put any headings in it. So it was very difficult to navigate when I wanted to check what I had decided on previously. And because of all these decisions, I ended up pulling what felt like every single thesis to review, sometimes multiple times. The only advantage in that is I discovered that a lot of them had social security numbers in them, which I was able to hide. So some good came out of it. And I did find more and more issues as I did that, but it wasted a ton of time having to look at things multiple times. The second mistake I made is that I did not set up the integration between OCLC and MarcEdit at first. You can export and import files with batches of records from Connexion. So I decided instead of taking a simple step of requesting a WS key from OCLC, set up that integration, I would just use those export files and I could, export them fine, work on them in MarcEdit. And then when I would import them, I never could get them to update properly in Connexion. At one point, I actually managed to delete almost all my completed work in one of the mnemonic files, the .mrk. So I had to redo almost all my work. And if I had set up that integration from the start, I could have searched for, imported, and updated my OCLC records directly from MarcEdit. I did at the end add the integration and updated the records directly from MarcEdit, but not the rest of the process. And no matter at what point I set up the integration, I really should have been looking at the records in MarcEdit earlier in the process, and there's a typo there, which is the cataloger. It's a little annoying to me. It just would have been so much easier if I had had files to look at instead of trying to just look at individual connection records. Okay, the one benefit from those mistakes is that I was able to refine my process and become more efficient during it. So in Sheets, I did in my last go round start tracking the number of records in each series. Before I had not, and so I never felt entirely sure that I had pulled all the records I needed to from the series when I was working on those batches. Then I also, when I was due at changing the subject headings, which I did after I'd done all the descriptive cataloging work, I created a sheet that had the original headings, the new headings, OCLC numbers, and call numbers. I should have been doing that all along, tracking precisely what I want to change. In the Google Doc, I eventually added headings for easier navigation, and I started including more detailed information and directions for future reference, and I actually have been referencing it in anticipation of doing another project in MarcEdit, so I'm very glad that I did that. I also got better at using MarcEdit. As I said before, searching for the issues in MarcEdit was so much more useful than using what I'd previously been doing just with the title information in the spreadsheet. One of the reasons that it was easier to search in MarcEdit was using regular expressions. I particularly use those to find things like brackets, which are difficult to search for in other ways. I just really don't like having brackets as much as possible in records since I don't think they really mean anything to most users of a catalog. And when I did my local changes, I did actually set up the Alma to MarcEdit integration, and that part went a lot smoother than the initial part using the OCLC integration. So I want to leave you with some suggestions for anyone's thinking about starting a cataloging project in MarcEdit. The first one is so obvious that I didn't put it on this slide. Set up the integrations. If you have an integration you can use, they exist for a reason. But besides that, the preparatory work you do before you start making any changes in MarcEdit is really important. First, be intentional and precise in how you use any spreadsheets and documents. That is something that I did not do, and it would have been so much easier to do if I had done that at the start of the project. Decide as much as possible on the changes you want to make in advance instead of continually adding or changing your mind throughout doing the project. Figure out an efficient workflow. For me, that would have been pulling or reviewing the theses by series, since that is how I did the work on them. And related to that, spend time on making the lists you use to pull any book you need to review and make it easy to use. I did not do that, and I definitely wasted some time because I did not do that from the start. So once you get started making changes, do a test batch to figure out how best to make your edits. MarcEdit is fairly easy to use actually, but it does take a little experimentation to figure out how to do things you want to do sometimes. Use a checklist to ensure that you've made all the changes you need to. I ended up using that Google Doc since I created headings based on each mark field that I was going to be editing. Document how and why you made the changes. There were several times during this process that I wish I had known why previous catalogers had made the decisions they did. And so this is something that you can refer to, but also future catalogers who might be working on those same records. Also, be aware of the fields that trigger an automatic update in Alma. If there's been a change in the record in OCLC, so you don't have to export them. For one of my first batches, I decided I would export them, and takes forever because you have to individually close the window that pops up every single time if something has successfully been exported into Alma. So I really did not just do that. And then in using MarcEdit, I have a few tips. Use the field count reports and missing field tools. The build a field tool is great. I used it to create that dissertation note, but you do have to pay attention to the punctuation and the fields that you're pulling from to create the new field to make sure that punctuation matches. It's easy to fix if you mess that up, but it's an extra step. Use the Mark validator when you have done all your edits, but do know that it won't find every issue that's going to prevent a replacement in connection. And one of the reasons I know that is because you can't delete fast headings in MarcEdit. You can delete them in connection, but if you're making the effort to change LC subject headings, you might as well try to get rid of the fast headings that are created from them. It doesn't actually matter because they don't display in our catalog anyway, but that's something I wish I had known when I started. And finally, I thought I should show you what actually happened, the results of this. So on the top, you have the primo results before I made the changes. You can see that this is identified as a book, and you can also see some of that weird construction in the title field. And then at the bottom, it is correctly showing up at the dissertation, and the title field looks a little cleaner. So, thank you, and now we'll go to the questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Catherine. That was really great. I know that the chat was abuzz uh, with being impressed with how thorough you were in outlining your project and, the pluses and minuses. So thanks again. That was really fantastic. If anyone has questions for Catherine, please use that Q&A button and place them there, and I will ask her. We'll just give it a minute or so to let people get their questions in. Okay, looks like we have our first question. Did you ever have any moments of discouragement? I am in awe, but I know that sometimes that can happen.
You part, yeah, I probably did. I've probably tried to block it out at this point. There's sometimes I thought, I can't believe I'm looking at this same thesis again, or where did I put this piece of information? And of course, doing a bunch of work and losing it was pretty discouraging. That I think is why it definitely prompted me to actually set up the integration between OCLC and MarcEdit. At the same time, because it was my first time doing something like this, I kind of was just excited about it through most of the time, but there were definitely times where I thought, why am I doing this? When is this going to end?
Thank you. Yeah, I can relate to that from projects I've worked on. We have another question. What are some of your next projects that have been sparked by this one? Also, please consider presenting on this project elsewhere or writing a paper.
Oh, nice. I mean, next up, I probably actually, because as I was checking some of the records, I do actually want to like really make sure that I deleted the fast headings from those weird subject headings that I didn't like. And actually, the subject headings is something that I do continue to be interested in trying to look for subject headings, especially the social disabilities one. I just find that to be such an odd um, subject heading, and kind of doing checking and seeing what, in our catalog. Of course, it's a shared catalog, so if you all of SUNY to make some, get rid of the subject headings that I don't like.
All right. Our next question, have you been able to get usage statistics on theses before and after the project?
No, I actually have not done that would be interesting to do, see if it had any changes to it, because now they are actually discoverable as a thesis.
Okay, we have another question. Am I wrong in this impression? Fast fields are added by a project at OCLC. Removing them may result in new slash replacements in the WorldCat master records.
That is probably true. That's why, I mean, I think that's kind of why maybe some of them are still there, or it's because I didn't delete the fast headings that were connected to the original subject headings, because they definitely have popped up again. We're the only people who have these particular things. But yes, they are added by OCLC. My hope is that since they're taken from the subject headings that are already in there, that they'll just disappear. It's something I do need to actually look into more. Because yes, they've definitely popped up again. But since they're not actually um, imported into Alma, they don't display in Primo, it hasn't been something I've done a ton of looking into since I did this project.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple more minutes if anyone else would like to ask any questions. I'll wait to see if anyone drops any in the Q&A. Until then, I will share, Catherine, that a lot of people have chimed in the chat, noting that they found the presentation very useful. So thank you again. Okay, it looks like we have, I guess, a comment responding to the question. This was the initial question asker.
Yeah.
Yes, they do not disappear in my experience, but they're created. And yes, if your local or network zone does not load fast, they'll not load into your NZ/IZ.
Yeah, I keep on wanting to, test it out, but I think they just may be stuck there, unfortunately.
Okay, we still have a couple more minutes if anyone has any questions. I do see that someone spoke to the fast heading question also in the chat saying that fast headings are added by an OCLC project. OCLC recommends that if you're changing fast headings in a record, you should delete the existing ones. And that person provided a link. And I will note that I have mentioned that we're going to be sharing a link to the recordings that are going to be posted to our website, and the slides from today will also be posted to our website. But we'll also go through the chat, and if people shared links that might otherwise not be available, we're going to be sharing those when we share our Q&A answer documents along with the slides and the recordings on our website. Just in case, if anyone's worried about missing out on any links in the chat. Oh, it looks like we have another question. Are theses available at your institution in electronic format as well?
No, they are not. I most actually this I've sometimes have thought about seeing if anyone wanted to digitize them, but I don't know that we actually have the time or resources to really do that. And then we would love to get more recent theses to be added, but that's never really been something that anyone has been able to coordinate. It's actually people aren't really doing theses anymore. They seem to be more capstone projects anyway. But I've definitely thought about trying to get some of these scanned.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you. Oh, and another question. Curious, how do you hide those social security numbers when someone wants to see them?
So the ones we have copies for most of them in our circulating collection and special collections. So the circulating collection ones, I actually just whited out so they'd be gone. So no one could see them. It was actually a very nice kind of calming thing to do. At the end of the day, I would go up, I could see Lake Ontario from up there, so I wouldn't drag them downstairs. It was great. The special collections ones, I believe if anyone requests them, they'll make an effort to hide the social security numbers.
Okay. Oh, I do see the person who had spoken to about the fast headings in the chat mistypes that. I mistyped the above comment, should read, they recommend that if you're changing Library of Congress subject headings, delete the associated or all fast headings. So thank you for that correction. And with that, we are ready to move on to our next presentation. So thanks again, Catherine, for that.